With my college football schedule preview and point spread prediction videos. Today I'll be doing the Minnesota Golden Gophers. So Minnesota's non-conference schedule is easy because they get two guaranteed wins against Buffalo, which is a group of five team, and Northwestern State, which is an FCS team. And their Power Four non-conference opponent is California, a terrible uh, team, a team that really has no home field advantage. So the only tough part for Minnesota having to play at California will be how far the travel is, which is why I think it's good that Minnesota's first bye week came after this game and before what is going to be a tough game to start the conference schedule against Rutgers because Rutgers, like Minnesota, is a physical team, and Rutgers returns Ethan Kaliak Manis at quarterback, who had a solid season last year and was Minnesota's starting quarterback in 2023. And Rutgers ranked at seventh in the country in the transfer portal this year, and they ranked second in the Big Ten in returning production at 71%, which is 9% more than Minnesota returns. And Rutgers beat Minnesota last year. And Minnesota has six different conference opponents than they did last year. So last year they played Michigan, USC, UCLA, Maryland, Illinois, and Penn State. And instead this year they will play Ohio State, Oregon, Northwestern, Purdue, Nebraska, and Michigan State. And Minnesota replacing Michigan and Penn State with Ohio State and Oregon is not going to help them because Ohio State and Oregon are the two games on Minnesota's schedule where I would say they have a 0% chance of winning. Because while I do think Minnesota's head coach PJ Fleck is a decent coach, Ryan Day and Dan Lanning are on another level. They've both got a good chance to be two of the best college football coaches of all time. And Minnesota is kind of in the middle with talent. And Ryan Day and Dan Lanning are two of the best recruiters in the country. And Ohio State and Oregon have been good football programs for a long time, especially Ohio State. But when Urban Meyer was at Ohio State, even though they didn't ever lose to Minnesota, they would sometimes lose to teams like Minnesota. But since Ryan Day has been the head coach, they've never lost to a team like Minnesota. And Oregon used to sometimes lose to teams like Minnesota, but since Dan Lanning has been there, they've never lost to a team like Minnesota. And I don't think that Minnesota's second bye week comes at a good time because it comes before the Oregon game. And it's nice though that Minnesota, even though they have to play two road games in a row, that the second one is against Northwestern, which is a team that has a stadium about the size of a high school team, and is a terrible team that should be a win for Minnesota. Minnesota should be a much better team than Northwestern. So that's why switching Maryland with Northwestern, I don't really think makes difference for Minnesota in strength of schedule. But getting Purdue will help Minnesota because while Minnesota doesn't have any conference games that I would consider to be 100% a guaranteed win, Purdue would be about as close to a guaranteed win as it gets for Minnesota. And the toughest two in a row on this schedule, I would say, would be Rutgers and Ohio State. And the four games of Nebraska, Iowa, Michigan State, and Wisconsin. It would be surprising if Minnesota didn't at least win two of those. Because none of those teams, I think, have the ability to be great this year. And Minnesota loves to run the football, and they've got a great running back coming back, Darius Taylor. And Nebraska probably has the highest ceiling of those four teams. But good news for Minnesota and this one is they get them at home, and Minnesota has won the last five meetings against Nebraska. So now for the point spread prediction, games in the green are games where I think Minnesota will be favored to win by a blowout, 20 or more points, and there's two of those, Buffalo and Northwestern State. Games in the blue are games where I think they'll be favored to win by double digits, 10 to 19 points, and there's one of those at Purdue. Games in the purple are games where I think they'll be favored to win by about a touchdown, 6 to 9 points, and there's four of those: California, Michigan State, Northwestern, and Wisconsin. Games in the pink are games where I think they'll be favored to win by about a field goal, 1 to 5 points, and there's two of those: Rutgers and Nebraska. And games in the gray are games where I think Minnesota will be about a field goal underdog, and there's one of those, Iowa. And games in the orange are games where I think Minnesota will be a double digit underdog, 10 to 19 points, and there's two of those, Ohio State and Oregon. So Buffalo, Minnesota should be favored in that one by about 30 points. And Northwestern State, Minnesota should be favored in that one by around 45 points. And California, the spread I'll say will be 7 points. And Michigan State and Wisconsin, those games are only in the purple because they're home games. They'd be in the pink if they were road games. But I'll say Minnesota will be a 6 point favorite in both of those. And Northwestern would be in the blue if it was a home game. But I think Minnesota will be favored by like 9 points in that one. And Purdue, I think Minnesota will be favored by around two touchdowns in that one, maybe 14 points. And Rutgers and Nebraska, those would be gray games if they were on the road, but because they're at home, I think Minnesota will be favored by, I'll say, 3 points in both of those. And Iowa would be in the pink if it was at home, but because it's on the road, I'll say Iowa will be a 3 point favorite over Minnesota. And Ohio State and Oregon, I think, will both be favored by about 14 points over Minnesota. But this schedule is not really tough, so Minnesota should at least get back to a bowl game. But I don't think they have really much of a chance of doing better than 9-3. But that will be it with this video, and please subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.